The fall of Earth. The skies burned red over New York City. Captain Sarah Chen squinted through the cockpit of her F-35, barely able to make out the outlines of the alien vessels through the smoke and debris clouding the air. It had been just 72 hours since the first ships appeared in Earth's orbit, and already the world as she knew it had ceased to exist. "Thunder lead to all units," she barked into her radio. "Form up on me. We're making another pass at their command ship." A chorus of affirmatives crackled back. Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. Her squadron might be the last organized resistance left in North America, but they weren't going down without a fight. As they banked toward the looming silhouette of the alien flagship, Sarah's mind wandered to how quickly it had all fallen apart. The ships had appeared without warning, their energy weapons carving swaths of destruction through every major city on the planet. Conventional militaries had been swatted aside like insects. In the space of a single day, governments had collapsed and billions had died. But humanity, as it turned out, was a stubborn species. Sarah's squadron streaked toward their target, missiles armed and ready. They'd discovered purely by accident that the aliens' energy shields had a critical weakness. They couldn't stop kinetic weapons moving above a certain velocity. It wasn't much, but it was the only advantage they had. "All units, fire on my mark," Sarah called out. The alien vessel grew larger in her view screen. 3, 2, 1, mark. A dozen missiles streaked from the human fighters, leaving trails of white smoke in their wake. Sarah held her breath as they crossed the distance in seconds. The alien ship's point defenses sprang to life, lancing out with coherent light to swat the projectiles from the sky. But there were too many. 3 missiles slipped through, slamming into the vessel's hull. Explosions blossomed along the ship's surface. Sarah allowed herself a moment of triumph before reality reasserted itself. The damage was superficial at best. They simply didn't have the firepower to bring down something that size. "All units, break and evade," she shouted, yanking her stick hard to port. Energy beams lanced out from the alien vessel, catching 2 of her pilots who'd been a fraction too slow. Sarah watched helplessly as their planes disintegrated in midair. As she banked away from the alien ship, a priority signal came through on her radio. "This is General Winters to all U.S. forces. Fall back to Rally Point Echo. I repeat, fall back to Rally Point Echo. This is not a drill." Sarah's heart sank. Rally Point Echo was an underground bunker complex in the Rocky Mountains, a last-ditch fallback position. If they were abandoning the entire East Coast. "Roger that, Command," she responded. Thunder Squadron returning to base for refuel and redeployment. As her fighters climbed to a safer altitude, Sarah took one last look at the ravaged skyline of New York. The Statue of Liberty was a broken stub, the skyscrapers of Manhattan reduced to twisted metal and shattered glass. Columns of smoke rose from 100 fires, blotting out the sun. Humanity had lost this battle, but Sarah swore they wouldn't lose the war. Dr. Aisha Malik hunched over her makeshift laboratory table, ignoring the distant rumble of explosions. The bunker complex beneath Cheyenne Mountain had been designed to withstand a nuclear war. With any luck, it would hold up against the alien onslaught long enough for her to complete her work. "How's it coming, Doc?" a gruff voice asked from behind her. Aisha turned to see General Winters. His uniform rumpled, and his eyes sunken from lack of sleep. She managed a tired smile. "I think we're onto something, sir. The alien material we recovered from that downed scout ship, it's like nothing I've ever seen before. The molecular structure is, well, it's as if it was designed to absorb and redirect energy." Winters nodded, though Aisha could tell most of the science was lost on him. "Bottom line it for me, Doctor. Can we use this against them?" Aisha hesitated. "Maybe. If we can reverse engineer the principles behind it, we might be able to create a defense against their energy weapons. But, sir, I need time, and resources we simply don't have down here." The general's face hardened. "Time is the one thing we're running out of, Doctor. Our last reports indicate the aliens have taken control of most major population centers. We're getting scattered transmissions from resistance groups. But he trailed off, the weight of the situation evident in his posture. Aisha turned back to her work, mind racing. There had to be a solution, some way to turn the tide. As she stared at the alien material under her microscope, a crazy idea began to form. "Sir," she said slowly, "what if we're thinking about this all wrong? We've been trying to match their technology, to find a way to shoot back. But what if instead we found a way to simply not be there when they shoot?" Winters raised an eyebrow. "Go on." Aisha's fingers flew over her tablet, pulling up simulations and equations. "This material, the way it manipulates energy, with the right application, we might be able to create a field that bends light around an object. Essentially, invisibility." The general's eyes widened as he grasped the implications. "You're talking about a stealth technology that would make our forces completely undetectable." Aisha nodded, excitement building. "Exactly. We can't match them in a stand-up fight, but if they can't see us coming." For the first time in days, a ghost of a smile crossed Winter's face. "How long?" "A week to prove the concept. Maybe a month to have a working prototype." Winters nodded decisively. "You've got 2 weeks, Doctor. I'll assign you whatever personnel and resources you need." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "The fate of our species may rest on your shoulders, Dr. Malik. Don't let us down." As the general's footsteps faded, Aisha turned back to her work with renewed determination. The aliens might have superior technology and overwhelming force on their side, but they were about to learn a harsh lesson about human ingenuity and the tenacity of a species fighting for its very survival. Humanity had lost its home, its cities, billions of lives. But the war was far from over. And if Aisha had anything to say about it, the invaders were in for one hell of a surprise. Exodus and adaptation. The colony ship Arcturus shuddered as it dropped out of faster-than-light travel, its hull groaning under the strain of deceleration. In the bridge, Captain Elena Vasquez gripped her chair tightly, her knuckles white. After 6 months of travel, they had finally reached their destination, a potentially habitable planet in the Ta-CD system. "Status report," Elena barked, her voice steady despite the tension evident in her posture. Her first officer, Commander Japark, quickly scanned the readouts on his console. "All systems nominal, Captain. We've arrived at the coordinates specified by the Cheyenne Mountain data packet." Elena nodded, allowing herself a moment of relief. When they'd fled Earth, they'd had no idea if the hastily calculated FTL jump would even work, let alone bring them to a survivable world. It seemed the eggheads back on Earth had come through for them one last time. "Put it on screen," she ordered. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a blue-green orb hanging in the void. It wasn't Earth. The continents were all wrong, and there were 3 small moons visible. But it was the most beautiful thing Elena had seen in months. Preliminary scans show a nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere, liquid water, and vegetation, Jay reported, his voice tinged with excitement. "It's not a perfect match for Earth, but it's well within survivable parameters." Elena allowed herself a small smile. "Well, ladies and gentlemen, it looks like we found our new home. Let's not waste any time. Prepare for atmospheric entry and begin scouting for a landing site." As the bridge crew bustled into action, Elena's mind wandered to the impossible journey that had brought them here. In the chaotic days following the alien invasion, humanity had thrown everything it had into a desperate plan for survival. With Dr. Malik's stealth technology protecting them from orbital bombardment, the remnants of Earth's governments and scientific communities had pooled their resources to retrofit a handful of ships for interstellar travel. It had been a monumental undertaking, completed in a fraction of the time it should have taken. Corners were cut, risks were taken, and not every ship had made it. But against all odds, the Arcturus and its precious cargo of 10,000 human survivors had reached their destination. Now came the hard part. 6 months later, The fledgling human colony of New Eden was taking shape on the shores of a vast inland sea. Prefabricated habitats dotted the landscape, surrounded by fields where Earth crops were being experimentally grown in the alien soil. It wasn't much to look at yet, but to Dr. Aisha Malik, it represented hope. She stood at the edge of the settlement, looking out over the alien landscape. The sky here was a pale lavender, thanks to trace elements in the upper atmosphere, and the local plant life came in shades of blue and purple rather than green. It was beautiful in its own way, but it would never truly be home. Credit for your thoughts, a voice said from behind her. Aisha turned to see Captain Vasquez approaching, looking as tired as Aisha felt. Just thinking about everything we left behind, Aisha replied, and everything we still have to do. Elena nodded, her expression grim. The latest survey teams found traces of rare earth elements in the mountains to the north. If we can get mining operations up and running, we might be able to start producing more advanced technology again. That's good news, Aisha said. We're going to need every advantage we can get if we want to survive here. This world may look peaceful, but we have no idea what kind of dangers it might hold. As if on cue, an alarm began to blare from the nearby command center. Both women broke into a run, reaching the facility just as J. Park was pulling up a holographic display of the planet. "We've got incoming," he said without preamble. Long-range sensors just picked up a ship entering the system. It's not one of ours. Elena's face hardened. Alien. Jay shook his head. I don't think so. The energy signature doesn't match anything in our database of the invaders' tech. This is something new. Aisha felt her heart racing. It could be another alien species, she said. One that might be friendly, or might want to finish what the invaders started. Elena was already moving towards the communication station. Sound general quarters. I want every able-bodied person armed and ready for potential hostilities. Dr. Malik, is your stealth field generator operational? Aisha nodded. It's tied into the colony's power grid. I can have us cloaked in 2 minutes. Do it, Elena ordered. Let's hope whoever's coming doesn't already know we're here. As the colony vanished from sight beneath the stealth field, Aisha couldn't help but marvel at how quickly humanity had adapted to its new circumstances. In just 6 months, they'd gone from refugees to a cohesive community capable of defending itself. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The alien ship grew larger on the holographic display as it approached the planet. It was sleek and organic looking, utterly unlike the brutal angular designs of the invaders who had destroyed Earth. As it entered orbit, a tense silence fell over the command center. Minutes ticked by with agonizing slowness. Then suddenly, a signal began broadcasting on all frequencies. Jay's fingers flew over his console as he worked to translate the alien language. It's a greeting, he said, disbelief evident in his voice. They're asking if anyone's home. Elena exchanged a look with Aisha. Well, the captain said with a wry smile, I guess it's time to see if we've made some new friends, or if we're about to face round 2. As Elena began composing a cautious response, Aisha felt a surge of pride in her fellow humans. They had lost everything, traveled unimaginable distances, and carved out a new home on an alien world. Whatever challenges this new encounter might bring, she had faith that humanity would face them with the same determination and ingenuity that had brought them this far. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: humanity was not going quietly into the night. They were here to stay, and the galaxy would soon learn just how resilient the human spirit could be. First strike. Commander Zara Okoro crouched in the shadows of an alien structure, her heart pounding in her chest. The purple-tinged sky of New Eden had given way to the inky blackness of space, visible through the transparent dome overhead. Around her, the alien cityscape of the orbital platform stretched out in every direction, a maze of twisting organic architecture that seemed to pulse with an inner light. Wraith team, sound off, she whispered into her comm unit. One by one, Her squad members responded, their voices tense but determined. They were the best of the best, handpicked from the New Eden colony for this high-risk mission. Each of them wore the latest iteration of Dr. Malik's stealth suit, rendering them practically invisible to both visual and technological detection. "Remember the mission," Zora said, her voice low and steady. "We're here to gather intel, and if possible, acquire samples of their FTL technology. We are not here to engage the enemy unless absolutely necessary. Clear?" A chorus of affirmatives came back over the comm. Zora nodded to herself, then gave the signal to move out. The team ghosted through the alien city, their movements silent and precise. It had been 2 years since humanity's first contact with the Arxer, the alien species that had answered their cautious greeting on New Eden. The Arxer had initially seemed friendly, offering trade and technological exchange. But it soon became clear that they saw humans as little more than a curiosity, a primitive species to be studied and perhaps exploited. Worse, intercepted communications had revealed that the Arxer were in contact with the very species that had driven humanity from Earth. The invaders, known as the Cretal, were apparently an old enemy of the Arxer, but rather than warn humanity of the threat, the Arxer had chosen to use the human refugees as bait, drawing the Cretal away from Arxer space. Now, with the Cretal fleet less than a year away from discovering New Eden, humanity had been forced to take drastic action. Zara's team reached their primary objective, a vast hangar bay where several Arxer ships sat idle. She signaled for her tech specialist, Raj, to approach the nearest vessel. "I'm in," Raj whispered after a few tense minutes. "Their security is good, but not good enough. Downloading schematics now." Zara allowed herself a small smile. Human ingenuity was proving to be a match for alien technology once again. But her satisfaction was short-lived as alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. "We've been made," Zara hissed. "Raj, grab what you can and let's move." The team sprinted back the way they had come, their stealth suits flickering as they pushed them to their limits. Arxer security forces poured into the corridors, their weapons charged and ready. "They can't see us," Zara reminded her team. "Stay calm and—" Her words were cut off as an energy blast sizzled past her head, impacting the wall behind her. Somehow, the Arxer had found a way to detect their stealth technology. "New plan," Zora barked. "We fight our way out. Weapons free." The human strike team sprang into action, their training and desperation making up for what they lacked in advanced weaponry. Zara's pulse rifle spat superheated plasma, dropping 2 Arxer guards before they could react. Around her, her team engaged in close-quarters combat, their enhanced reflexes and augmented strength catching the aliens off guard. As they fought their way towards their extraction point, Zora couldn't help but feel a fierce pride in her team. They were outnumbered and outgunned, facing an enemy with technology centuries ahead of their own. But they were holding their own, their determination and adaptability proving to be powerful weapons in their own right. "Exfil's ship is 2 minutes out," Raj called over the comm. "We need to reach the outer airlock." Zara acknowledged, then turned to her demolitions expert. "Liu, we need a distraction. Something big." Liu's grin was audible in his voice. "With pleasure, Commander." Moments later, a series of explosions rocked the station. Emergency force fields sprang up, containing the damage, but the chaos was exactly what they needed. The team made a final push for the airlock, Zora providing covering fire as her squad cycled through. Just as the last team member cleared the airlock, a massive Arxer security mech rounded the corner, its weapons trained on Zora. Time seemed to slow as she assessed her options, knowing she had only seconds to act. In that moment, Zara made a decision that would change the course of the war. Instead of retreating, she charged forward, her suit's energy reserves dumped into a burst of superhuman speed. She crashed into the mech with bone-crushing force, her augmented strength allowing her to grapple with the machine. "Go," she shouted to her team. "Complete the mission. The last thing Zara saw before the airlock closed was the look of shock and awe on her team's faces. Then she turned her full attention to the Arxer mech, a fierce grin spreading across her face. "All right, you oversized tin can," she growled. "Let's see what you've got." Back on New Eden, the mood in the war room was tense as they awaited news of the mission. Captain Elena Vasquez paced back and forth, her eyes fixed on the long-range sensors. Dr. Aisha Malik sat nearby, her fingers flying over a holographic keyboard as she worked on integrating the newly acquired Arxer data into their systems. "Incoming transmission," the comms officer announced. "It's Wraith Team." Belena's head snapped up. "Put them through." The holographic display flickered to life, showing the battered but triumphant faces of the strike team. But one face was noticeably absent. "Report," Elena said, her voice tight. Raj, now the ranking officer, stepped forward. "Mission accomplished, Captain. We've acquired the FTL schematics and dealt a significant blow to Arxer operations in this sector." But he hesitated, his expression grim. "We lost Commander Okoro. She sacrificed herself to ensure our escape." A heavy silence fell over the war room. Zara had been more than just an excellent soldier. She had been a symbol of hope for the colony, a living embodiment of humanity's resilience. Elena closed her eyes for a moment, allowing herself to feel the weight of the loss. When she opened them again, her gaze was steel. Zara knew the risks, as do we all. Her sacrifice will not be in vain. She turned to Aisha. "Doctor, how soon can we integrate this new technology into our defenses?" Aisha's eyes were red-rimmed, but her voice was steady. "With the Arxer schematics, we can have a working prototype in a month. Maybe less." Elena nodded. "Make it 2 weeks. The Cretal will be here soon, and we need every advantage we can get." She addressed the room at large. "Today, we've proven that humanity is not just surviving. We're fighting back. The Arxer underestimated us. The Cretal think we're defeated. It's time to show them both how wrong they are." As the war room erupted into determined activity, Elena gazed out at the alien landscape of New Eden. They had lost much, their homeworld, countless lives, and now one of their best leaders. But with each loss, humanity's resolve only grew stronger. The Arxer had made a grave mistake in betraying them. The Cretal would soon learn the cost of underestimating human tenacity, and any other species that stood in their way would come to fear the day they crossed paths with the refugees of Earth. For humanity was done running. From this day forward, they would be the hunters, not the hunted, and the galaxy would tremble at their approach. Galactic allies. The bridge of the HSS Defiant hummed with tension as it dropped out of FTL on the edge of an unknown star system. Captain Elena Vasquez leaned forward in her command chair, her eyes fixed on the main view screen. "Status report," she ordered, her voice steady despite the weight of their mission. Her first officer, Commander Japark, quickly scanned his console. "All systems nominal, Captain. We've arrived at the coordinates provided by the Arxer data." Elena nodded, a grim smile playing at the corners of her mouth. The intel they'd stolen had been a goldmine, revealing not just advanced technology, but also the locations of other species who had suffered at the hands of the Cretal and been betrayed by the Arxer. "Life signs?" she asked. "Multiple readings on the third planet," Jay replied. "Definitely sentient, but not matching any known species in our database." Elena took a deep breath. This was it. Humanity's first attempt to make contact with a potential ally against their common enemies. Open a channel. All frequencies. Let's hope they're in a talking mood. As Jay worked to establish communication, Elena reflected on how far they'd come in the past year. The Arxer technology they'd stolen had revolutionized their defenses and propulsion systems. New Eden was now protected by a network of stealth satellites and automated defense platforms, all powered by Dr. Malik's latest innovations. But it wouldn't be enough. Not against the full might of the Cretal fleet. They needed allies, and they needed them fast. "Captain," Jay called out, interrupting her thoughts. "We're receiving a response." The view screen flickered to life, revealing a being unlike anything Elena had ever seen. It was vaguely humanoid, but with iridescent scales covering its body and 4 arms that ended in delicate multi-fingered hands. Its large, compound eyes regarded them with what Elena hoped was curiosity rather than hostility. "I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the human species," she said, fighting to keep her voice calm. "We come seeking alliance against our common enemies, the Cretal and the Arxer." There was a moment of silence as the alien's translation software processed her words. Then, to Elena's surprise, the being's mouthparts curved into what could only be a smile. "Greetings, humans," it replied, its voice a melodious trill. "I am first speaker Zixath of the Nix-Ari Confederation. We have long awaited this day." Hours later, Elena found herself in a vast, crystal-domed chamber on the Nix-Ari homeworld. Around her, representatives from a dozen different species sat in a rough circle, their forms as varied as the stars themselves. Some were clearly related to the Nix-Ari, while others were so alien that Elena could barely comprehend their biology. First speaker Zixath raised all 4 of its hands for silence. "Friends, allies, fellow survivors," it began. "For too long, we have hidden in the shadows, each nursing our own wounds inflicted by the Cretal and betrayed by the false promises of the Arxer. But no more. Today we welcome a new ally, one who has done what none of us dared. They have struck back." A murmur of excitement rippled through the gathered aliens. Elena felt the weight of their gazes upon her, a mix of hope and skepticism. "Captain Vasquez," Zixath continued, "please tell us your story." Elena stood, her heart pounding. This was it, the moment that could decide the fate of not just humanity, but all the species gathered here. Less than a decade ago, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "My people had never left our home planet. We thought we were alone in the universe. Then the Cretal came." She told them everything: the fall of Earth, the desperate flight to New Eden, the betrayal by the Arxer, and finally, the daring raid that had brought them here. As she spoke, she saw the aliens' expressions change from skepticism to shock, then to a grudging respect. "We are few," Elena concluded, "but we are determined. We have adapted their technology, turned their own weapons against them, and now we come to you, not as conquerors or saviors, but as equals. Together, we can end the tyranny of the Cretal and the duplicity of the Arxer. Together, we can forge a new future for all our peoples." As she finished, the chamber erupted into a cacophony of alien voices. Some were shouting support, others arguing amongst themselves. Zixath raised its hands once more for quiet. "You have given us much to consider, Captain," it said. "But tell us, why should we risk our hiding places? How can we hope to stand against the might of the Cretal fleet?" Elena smiled, a fierce light in her eyes. "Because we have something they don't. Something no amount of advanced technology can match." She paused, looking around the room. "We have nothing left to lose and everything to gain. We have the determination of those fighting for their very existence. And now, we have each other." She activated a holographic projector, displaying the schematics for a weapon Dr. Malik had been developing. "This is a prototype for a device that can disrupt the Cretal's energy shields. With your help, we can perfect it. With your knowledge of their movements, we can strike where they're weakest." The aliens leaned in, their eyes wide as they studied the hologram. Elena continued, her voice rising with passion. "The Cretal think they're invincible. The Arxer believe they can play us all against each other. It's time we showed them how wrong they are." A tall avian being with iridescent feathers stood. "The Vothrai stand with the humans," it declared, its beak clacking for emphasis. "As do the Myrex," growled the being that seemed to be made of living stone. One by one, the representatives pledged their support. Elena felt a swell of emotion in her chest, hope, determination, and a fierce joy. This was more than she could have dreamed of. Zixath's compound eyes gleamed as it turned to Elena. "It seems, Captain, that you have your alliance. Now let us plan our first strike against our common foe." As the chamber buzzed with excited discussion, Elena allowed herself a moment of reflection. They were still outnumbered and outgunned. The path ahead would be fraught with danger and likely heavy losses. But for the first time since the fall of Earth, she felt true hope. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy, not as conquerors, not as victims, but as the spark that would ignite a revolution. The Krital and the Arxer had no idea what was coming for them. Let them tremble, Elena thought. The children of Earth are coming, and we're bringing the galaxy with us. Retaking Earth. The vast emptiness of space erupted into chaos as the combined fleet of the Galactic Alliance dropped out of FTL on the outskirts of the solar system. Thousands of ships, representing a dozen different species, moved into formation around the flagship HS Prometheus. On its bridge, Fleet Admiral Elena Vasquez stood tall, her eyes fixed on the holographic display of their home system. "Status report," she commanded, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. Her XO, a Nixari named Xylax, responded promptly. "All ships accounted for, Admiral. The Krital Defense Fleet has been detected in high Earth orbit. They've begun to mobilize in response to our arrival." Elena nodded, a grim smile playing at her lips. "Just as we predicted. Comms, patch me through to the fleet." As the channel opened, Elena took a deep breath. This was the moment they had been preparing for over the past 5 years, a moment that would decide the fate not just of humanity, but of all the species that had joined their cause. "Attention all ships," she began, her voice carrying across the vast fleet. "This is Admiral Vasquez. Before us lies our ultimate objective, Earth, the cradle of humanity, and the linchpin of Krital control in this sector. Today, we fight not just for my people's homeworld, but for all those who have suffered under Krital oppression and Arxer treachery." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Each of you knows your role in this battle. Trust in your training, in your shipmates, and in the strength of our united front. The Krital believe themselves invincible. The Arxer think they can manipulate us all. Today, we proved them both wrong." Elena's eyes blazed with determination. "For Earth, for all our homes, for the future of this galaxy, attack pattern Omega. Engage." The fleet surged forward, a dazzling array of ships representing the best technology and tactics each species had to offer. At its heart flew the Prometheus, a marvel of engineering that combined human ingenuity with the most advanced alien tech. As they closed with the Krital fleet, the void lit up with energy weapons and missile trails. The battle was joined. On the surface of Earth, in the ruins of what was once Washington, D.C., Dr. Aisha Malik worked feverishly to calibrate the massive device before her. Around her, a mixed team of humans and aliens fought a running battle against Krital ground forces. "How much longer, Doc?" shouted Captain Raj Singh, laying down covering fire with his plasma rifle. Aisha didn't look up from her work. 5 minutes. I need to make sure the resonance frequency is exact, or this whole mission is for nothing." Raj nodded, then turned to bark orders at their defensive line. They had to hold out just a little longer. The device Aisha was working on was the culmination of years of research and collaboration between the allied species. A massive electromagnetic pulse generator designed to disable Krital technology across the entire planet. But it had to be activated from the surface, right under the enemy's nose. As Aisha made the final adjustments, she couldn't help but marvel at how far they'd come. The frightened refugee who had fled Earth all those years ago now stood at the forefront of a galactic revolution in technology. Human adaptability combined with alien knowledge had produced miracles. A nearby explosion rocked the ground, nearly knocking Aisha off her feet. "That's it," she yelled. "It's ready." Raj immediately began the activation sequence. The massive device hummed to life, energy building within it to unimaginable levels. "Prometheus, this is Ground Team Alpha," Raj called into his comm. "Package is hot. I repeat, package is hot. Advise all Allied forces to switch to passive systems." Back in orbit, Alina received the transmission with a fierce grin. All ships, this is the Admiral. Switch to passive systems and prepare for Phase 2. Brace for EMP in 3, 2, 1. A blinding pulse of energy erupted from the Earth's surface, expanding rapidly into space. Cretal ships began to drift, their systems overloaded and disabled. The pulse washed over the Alliance fleet harmlessly, their ships protected by technology developed specifically for this moment. All ships, commence Phase 2. Elena ordered. Boarding teams, you have a go. Ground forces, begin planetfall. Let's take back what's ours. The battle shifted in an instant. Alliance ships swarmed the disabled Cretal vessels, boarding parties breaching their hulls. On the planet's surface, drop pods rained down, disgorging troops to engage the confused and disorganized Cretal ground forces. Elena watched the tactical display, coordinating the complex dance of ships and troops. They were winning, but the cost was high. Ships on both sides exploded in silent bursts of fire and debris. On the planet below, the dots representing soldiers, her people and her allies, winked out one by one. But they pushed on, driven by a determination born of years of hardship and the unbreakable bonds forged between species that had once been strangers. Hours passed in a blur of tactical decisions and moment-to-moment combat. Then suddenly, a cheer erupted on the bridge. "Admiral!" Xilax called out, his compound eyes shimmering with excitement. "The Cretal command ship has surrendered. Their fleet is standing down." Elena allowed herself a moment to close her eyes, feeling the weight of years lift from her shoulders. When she opened them, her gaze was steel. "Patch me through to their commander. It's time to discuss terms." 1 week later, Elena stood on the crumbling steps of the Lincoln Memorial, looking out over a sea of faces, human and alien alike. The sky above was filled with ships from a dozen worlds, a testament to the new era they were entering. "People of Earth, citizens of the Galactic Alliance," she began, her voice carrying across the gathering. "Today we stand at a crossroads of history. The Cretal occupation has been broken. The Arxer betrayal has been answered. But our work is far from over." She gestured to the ruins around them. "Earth will heal, as will all the worlds that have suffered under tyranny. And we will help each other rebuild. For in our darkest hour, we discovered a truth that will forever light our way forward. We are stronger together than we ever were apart." Elena's eyes blazed with passion as she continued. "Let this be a lesson to any who would seek to conquer, to oppress, to pit us against one another. The free peoples of this galaxy will not bow. We will not break. And we will always, always fight back." A cheer went up from the crowd, a cacophony of human voices mingling with the calls and trills of a dozen alien species. As Elena looked out over them, she felt a profound sense of hope. Humanity had lost its home, had been driven to the brink of extinction. But in doing so, they had found their place in a vast and complex galaxy. They had forged alliances, sparked a revolution, and changed the course of history for countless worlds. The road ahead would not be easy. There were still enemies to face, wounds to heal, and a galaxy to rebuild. But as Elena gazed at the diverse faces before her, human and alien, all united in purpose, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever challenges the future held, they would face them together. And woe betide any force foolish enough to stand in their way. For the children of Earth had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The day the universe went quiet. The coffee in Dr. Elena Rodriguez's cup had gone cold hours ago, but she barely noticed. Her eyes were fixed on the computer screen showing data that made no sense. For the past 3 days, the Kepler Deep Space Observatory had been tracking something impossible. Massive objects were moving through space at speeds that defied everything humanity knew about physics. Elena rubbed her tired eyes and checked the calculations again. The objects were huge, each one roughly the size of Manhattan, and there were hundreds of them. They moved in perfect formation like a military fleet, but that was impossible. Humanity was alone in the universe. They had been searching for signs of life for decades and found nothing. The door to her office burst open. Dr. James Park, her research partner, stumbled in with his laptop clutched against his chest. His face was pale and his hands shook slightly. "Elena, you need to see this," he whispered, as if speaking too loudly might somehow make the situation worse. "The objects. They changed course 6 hours ago." Elena felt her stomach drop. Changed course to where? James set his laptop on her desk and opened it. The screen showed a star map with a bright yellow dot in the center. Earth. Hundreds of red dots were moving directly toward it. "They'll be here in 18 hours, James said quietly. For a moment, Elena couldn't breathe. She stared at the screen, hoping it would change, hoping this was some kind of mistake. But the numbers didn't lie. Something was coming to Earth, and it was coming fast. "We need to call the government," Elena said, reaching for her phone. "I already did," James replied. "They want to see us immediately." 3 hours later, Elena found herself in a room deep beneath the Pentagon. The walls were lined with screens showing satellite feeds, radar data, and astronomical readings. Around a long table sat the most important people in the American government, including President Sarah Mitchell herself. President Mitchell was a woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She had served as a military officer before entering politics, and it showed in the way she carried herself. When Elena finished explaining what they had discovered, the president leaned back in her chair and was quiet for a long moment. "So you're telling me that in less than 15 hours, hundreds of alien ships will reach Earth orbit?" she asked. "Yes, Madam President," Elena confirmed. "Based on their size and formation, this appears to be a military fleet." General Marcus Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, spoke up. "Dr. Rodriguez, in your opinion, is this an invasion force?" Elena looked around the room at the worried faces staring at her. "I can't think of any other reason why they would come here in such numbers." The room fell silent. Elena could hear the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of people working in other parts of the building. The weight of what was happening pressed down on everyone present. "What are our options?" President Mitchell asked. General Kane opened a folder in front of him. "We have nuclear weapons, conventional military forces, and some experimental energy weapons, but against technology advanced enough to travel between stars." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. "How long before the world knows?" the president asked. "Amateur astronomers are already posting about unusual objects in space," replied Dr. Sarah Chen, the president's science advisor. "We have maybe 6 hours before the media picks it up." President Mitchell stood up. "Then we prepare for the worst and hope for the best. General Kane, put all military forces on high alert. Dr. Chen, work with Elena and James to monitor the incoming fleet. I'll prepare to address the nation." As the meeting broke up, Elena felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to see General Kane looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Dr. Rodriguez, there's something else we need to discuss," he said quietly, "something classified." Elena followed the general down a corridor she hadn't seen before. They took an elevator that went down much further than she expected. When the doors opened, she gasped. Before her was a massive underground facility filled with advanced technology she had never seen before. Scientists and technicians worked at stations that looked like they belonged in a science fiction movie. "Welcome to Deep Shield," General Kane said. "This facility has been preparing for this day for 30 years. Elena stared in amazement. Preparing for what day? "The day Earth would be contacted by hostile aliens," Kane replied. "We've known they were out there for decades. We've been getting ready." As they walked through the facility, Kane explained that Deep Shield had been secretly developing defensive technologies since the 1990s. They had built quantum shields that could protect entire cities, space-based weapons platforms, and communication systems that could reach across the galaxy. "If you knew aliens existed, why didn't you tell the world?" Elena asked. Kane stopped walking and turned to face her. "Because we weren't ready. We needed time to build defenses without causing mass panic. The alien civilizations out there, they're not friendly. Most of them see younger species as threats to be eliminated. They entered a control room with a massive screen showing Earth from space. Red dots were appearing at the edge of the solar system, moving rapidly toward the planet. "They're here," announced a technician. Elena watched as hundreds of alien ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They were enormous, dark shapes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The ships arranged themselves in perfect formation around Earth, like predators surrounding wounded prey. "Incoming transmission," called another technician. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies." The main screen switched to show a creature that made Elena step backward in shock. It was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and 4 arms. Its eyes were large and completely black, and when it spoke, its voice was like the sound of grinding metal. "Primitive species of the 3rd planet," the creature said. "I am Commander Thexel of the Vanguard Empire. Your world now belongs to us. You have 48 of your rotational periods to surrender unconditionally." The alien commander gestured with one of his 4 arms, and the screen showed images of destroyed planets. Cities in ruins, landscapes turned to glass, species reduced to slavery. "We have conquered 800 worlds," Thexel continued. "Your primitive weapons cannot harm us. Your technology is centuries behind ours. Surrender now, and some of your species will be allowed to live as workers in our empire. Resist, and your world will burn." The transmission ended, leaving the control room in stunned silence. 48 hours, General Kane said grimly. "Not much time." Elena found her voice. "What do we do?" Kane smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting a long time for this moment. "We show them why they picked the wrong planet to threaten." 6 hours later, President Mitchell appeared on television screens around the world. Behind her stood the flags of every nation on Earth. Her voice was calm and strong as she spoke to both humanity and the aliens listening. "Citizens of Earth, and to the Vanguard Empire," she began, "we have received your ultimatum. After careful consideration, representatives of every nation on Earth have reached a unanimous decision." Elena watched from the deep shield control room, surrounded by technicians preparing Earth's defenses. On screens around the room, she could see the alien fleet hanging in space like dark vultures. "We respectfully decline your offer," President Mitchell continued. "Earth has faced many threats throughout history. We have survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, plagues, and wars. We have always found a way to endure. Today will be no different." The president stepped closer to the camera. "Commander Thexel, you said our technology is primitive. You said our weapons cannot harm you. You may be right. But you made one critical mistake." Elena held her breath, knowing what was coming next. "You assumed we were alone," President Mitchell said. "You assumed we were helpless. You assumed Earth was an easy target. Commander, you have 47 hours and 54 minutes to remove your fleet from our solar system. If you do not, we will consider ourselves at war." The transmission ended. For a moment, the deep shield control room was silent. Then alarms began to sound. "Multiple energy signatures from the alien fleet," called a technician. "They're charging weapons." General Kane stepped forward. "All shield generators to full power. Prepare for incoming fire." Elena watched the screens as beams of pure energy lanced down from the alien ships toward Earth's major cities. Each beam contained enough power to level mountains, enough energy to boil oceans. They struck New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, and dozens of other cities around the world. Light flashed across Earth's surface. The planet seemed to glow for a moment as the alien weapons discharged their full power. Then the light faded, and Elena gasped. The cities were completely untouched. People walked the streets as if nothing had happened. Traffic moved normally. Not a single building had been damaged. In space, commands. Thexel stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. His most powerful weapons had struck their targets directly. Every instrument confirmed successful hits. But the human cities remained exactly as they were before. "Fire again," he ordered his crew. "Full power on all weapons." More energy beams struck Earth. then kinetic projectiles the size of buildings, then exotic matter warheads that should have cracked the planet's crust. Nothing worked. Earth's cities remained perfectly protected, as if the alien weapons were merely light shows. Commander Thexel felt something he had not experienced in his 3 centuries of conquest: fear. In all his years of warfare, in all the worlds he had destroyed, he had never encountered anything like this. "Sir," called his tactical officer, "our weapons are having no effect. It's as if the planet has some kind of shield we cannot detect." Thexel stared at the blue and green world spinning peacefully below his fleet. For the first time in his long military career, he wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. On the surface of that planet, 8 billion humans went about their daily lives, completely protected by technology he couldn't understand, couldn't detect, and couldn't defeat. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving another transmission from the planet." "Put it through," Thexel said, his voice much quieter than before. President Mitchell appeared on the screen again. This time she was not alone. Beside her stood people in military uniforms Elena didn't recognize, wearing insignia from no nation on Earth. "Commander Thexel," the president said, "I hope our demonstration was instructive. You now have 47 hours and 36 minutes to withdraw your fleet. I suggest you use that time wisely." The transmission ended, leaving Commander Thexel staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew worked frantically, trying to understand how their most powerful weapons had been rendered completely useless. For the first time in 800 conquests, the Vanguard Empire had encountered something they couldn't defeat. And deep in the underground facilities of Earth, humanity prepared to reveal secrets that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Humanity's hidden truth. Commander Thexel had not slept in 37 hours. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the primitive blue world that had somehow rendered his entire fleet powerless. Around him, his officers worked desperately to find some weakness in Earth's mysterious defenses. "Report," he demanded of his science officer. Vactel, a 6-armed creature with crystalline skin, looked up from his instruments with frustration clear in his multifaceted eyes. "Commander, our sensors cannot detect any shield generators on the planet's surface. Whatever is protecting them is beyond our ability to understand." "That's impossible," Thexel replied. "They're using primitive chemical rockets. Their weapons are metal projectiles and explosive devices. How can they have defensive technology superior to ours?" Before Vactel could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the bridge. The tactical display lit up with new contacts appearing on the edge of the solar system. "Commander," called the sensor operator, his voice cracking with panic. "I'm reading massive energy signatures. Ships are dropping out of hyperspace." Thexel rushed to the tactical station and felt his blood turn cold. Hundreds of new contacts were appearing on the display, but these weren't primitive human vessels. These ships were sleek, advanced, and massive. Some were even larger than his own flagship. "Where did Hey come from?" he whispered. The answer came in the form of a new transmission from Earth. This time, the human president was joined by a tall man in a uniform Thexel didn't recognize. Behind them, banks of advanced computers hummed quietly. "Commander Thexel," President Mitchell said, "allow me to introduce General Marcus Kane, commander of Earth's Deep Space Defense Force. General Kane has something to show you." The human general stepped forward. Despite being from a supposedly primitive species, Kane carried himself with the confidence of a veteran warrior. "Commander," Kane said, "for the past 30 years, humanity has been aware of the Vanguard Empire's expansion across this galaxy. We've watched you destroy civilizations, enslave species, and spread fear among the stars. Today, that ends." The screen changed to show a star map. Red zones marked Vanguard territory, but blue zones surrounded them completely. The blue zones were larger, more numerous, and strategically positioned to cut off major Vanguard supply lines. "What you're seeing," General Kane continued, "is the Terran Defense Network, 47 star systems under Earth's protection. 63 species that have chosen to stand with humanity rather than submit to the Vanguard Empire. Commander Thexel stared at the map in disbelief. The blue zones represented a military alliance larger and more powerful than the Vanguard Empire. But that was impossible. Humans had barely left their own planet. "You're bluffing," Thexel transmitted back to Earth. "Your species is primitive. You cannot have technology superior to ours." General Kane smiled. "Dr. Rodriguez, would you explain Project Quantum Shield to our guest?" Elena stepped into view of the camera. After the initial shock of first contact, she had thrown herself into understanding Earth's hidden defenses. What she had learned still amazed her. "Commander Thexel," she began, "your weapons fire energy and matter through normal space-time. Our quantum shields phase our cities into parallel dimensions during attacks. Your weapons pass through the dimensional barriers harmlessly, while our cities remain perfectly safe." She gestured to a display showing complex mathematical equations. "The technology is based on principles your science hasn't discovered yet. We learned it from the Andromedans, one of the first species to join our alliance." Commander Thexel felt his certainty crumbling. The mathematics on the humans' display were indeed beyond Vanguard understanding. But how had these primitives mastered such advanced science? "The truth, Commander," President Mitchell said, "is that humanity has been preparing for this encounter for decades. When we first detected Vanguard expansion, we knew it was only a matter of time before you reached Earth. So we did what humans do best. We adapted." The screen changed to show images that made Thexel's crew gasp in shock. Human ships engaged in battles with Vanguard forces, but these weren't recent battles. The timestamps showed conflicts spanning 20 years. "We've been fighting the Vanguard Empire for 2 decades, General Kane explained. "Every time you attacked one of our allied worlds, we were there. Every time you tried to enslave a species, we stopped you. You never knew it, because we made sure you never survived to report back." Thexel's communications officer worked frantically at his station. "Commander, I'm checking our records. We have lost contact with 17 exploration fleets over the past 20 years. We assume they were lost to natural phenomena or primitive resistance." "They were lost to us," Kane confirmed. "The Terran Defense Fleet has been systematically eliminating Vanguard scout ships and advance forces. We've been studying your technology, learning your tactics, and preparing for the day you would find Earth." The tactical display updated again, showing the new ships that had arrived at the edge of the solar system. They were moving into position around the Vanguard fleet, surrounding them completely. "Commander," President Mitchell said, "you now have a choice. Surrender your fleet and face trial for crimes against sentient species, or attempt to fight your way out against forces you cannot hope to defeat." For a moment, the bridge of the Vanguard flagship was completely silent. Then Vactel, the science officer, spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "Commander, I'm analyzing the energy signatures of the human ships. Their power output is incredible. Each of their vessels generates more energy than our entire fleet combined." Thexel closed his eyes. In 3 centuries of military service, he had never faced defeat. The Vanguard Empire had seemed unstoppable, their technology unmatched. Now he learned that they had been outclassed for decades by a species they had considered primitive. "How?" he asked, opening his communications channel to Earth. "How did you become so advanced so quickly?" Dr. Rodriguez answered. "Commander, you made a fundamental mistake in understanding humanity. You saw our current technology and assumed it represented our limits. But humans don't accept limits. When we learned about the threats in the galaxy, we didn't despair. We didn't hide. We reached out to other species, formed alliances, and learned everything we could." She gestured to the star map. "The Andromedans taught us dimensional physics. The Cetians shared their energy manipulation techniques. The Rigel Collective showed us how to build ships that could cross the galaxy in days rather than months. Every species you tried to conquer became our teachers and allies." "You see, Commander," General Kane added, "the Vanguard Empire rules through fear and conquest. Humanity leads through cooperation and mutual respect. When faced with a choice between serving an empire that destroys worlds and joining an alliance that protects them,
Most species choose the Alliance. The tactical officer interrupted with urgent information. Commander, more ships are arriving. The sensor readings are off the charts. I count over 2,000 vessels, all of unknown configuration. Through the viewports of his flagship, Thexel could see the approaching fleet, ships of a dozen different designs representing species from across the galaxy. Some were sleek and organic-looking, others were geometric and crystalline. All of them radiated power that dwarfed his own vessels. The Galactic Liberation Alliance, President Mitchell explained. 63 species working together to end the age of conquest and slavery. Today, Commander, the Vanguard Empire ends. Thexel looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. For the first time in their lives, these warriors who had conquered hundreds of worlds faced certain defeat. The humans had not just defended themselves. They had built a coalition that made the Vanguard Empire obsolete. What happens to us? Thexel asked quietly. That depends on you, General Kane replied. Officers who surrender and cooperate with war crimes tribunals will be treated fairly. Those who choose to fight will be eliminated. The commander of the Vanguard Empire looked one last time at the blue and green world that had seemed like such an easy target. On its surface, 8 billion humans continued their daily lives, protected by technology and alliances beyond his comprehension. All ships, he transmitted to his fleet, stand down, lower shields, and prepare to be boarded. Around him, his crew followed orders with the efficient sigh of professional soldiers, even in defeat. As Terran Defense Force ships moved to secure the Vanguard fleet, Thexel reflected on how completely he had underestimated the species called humanity. 3 months later, Elena Rodriguez stood in the observation deck of the TDF Enterprise, Earth's newest flagship. Through the massive windows, she watched construction ships building the first interstellar embassy in Earth's history. Representatives from 63 species would soon arrive to establish permanent diplomatic relations with humanity. Hard to believe it's been less than a year since we detected that first fleet, said a voice behind her. Elena turned to see President Mitchell, now serving as Earth's first galactic ambassador. The former president wore the blue uniform of the Terran Diplomatic Corps, but she still carried herself with the authority of a world leader. It's hard to believe any of it, Elena replied. A year ago, I thought we were alone in the universe. Now we're part of an alliance spanning half the galaxy. Through the windows, they could see human ships working alongside vessels from dozens of other worlds. The sight that had once seemed like science fiction was now simply humanity's new reality. Dr. Rodriguez, Ambassador Mitchell said, I have a question for you. In your scientific opinion, what do you think made the difference? Why were we able to succeed where so many other species failed? Elena considered the question carefully. Over the past months, she had studied the histories of dozens of civilizations. She had learned about species that had submitted to the Vanguard without fighting, others that had fought alone and been destroyed, and still others that had hidden in remote corners of the galaxy. I think it's because humans have never accepted that something is impossible, she said finally. When we learned about the threats we didn't give up. We found ways to overcome challenges that seemed insurmountable. We turned enemies into allies and used our curiosity as a weapon. Ambassador Mitchell nodded. And now, Elena said, looking out at the ships of the Galactic Liberation Alliance, we help other species do the same thing. We show them that no empire is too powerful to resist, no challenge too great to overcome. As they watched, a new ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. It was massive, elegant, and unlike anything Elena had seen before. The communications panel chimed with an incoming transmission. This is Ambassador Zathara of the Magellanic Council, came a voice like singing crystal. We represent 47 species from the neighboring galaxy. We have heard of humanity's victory over the Vanguard Empire. We request permission to open diplomatic relations and discuss mutual defense against threats from the void between galaxies. Elena looked at Ambassador Mitchell and saw the same expression on her face that had been there during the first alien contact. Determination, curiosity, and the absolute certainty that humanity would find a way to meet whatever challenge came next. Permission granted, Ambassador Zathara, Mitchell replied. "Welcome to the Terran system. We have much to discuss." As the Magellanic ship moved toward Earth's new orbital station, Elena realized that the story was far from over. The defeat of the Vanguard Empire had been just the beginning. Humanity had proven that cooperation could triumph over conquest, that curiosity could overcome fear, and that even the most impossible challenges could be met with determination and alliance. The galaxy was vast, filled with wonders and threats beyond imagination. But for the first time in their history, humans were not alone in facing them. They had allies, friends, and the knowledge that together, no empire could stand against the power of free species working toward a common goal. In the depths of space, the age of conquest was ending. The age of cooperation had begun, and humanity, the species that had once thought itself alone in the universe, now stood as guardians of freedom for countless worlds across the stars.